Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. The other week I posted a video in which I talked about some games that I picked up in a local charity shop. And against all the odds, it turned out not to be my worst performing video of all time. And being as I had so much fun doing it, I thought, why not do it again? What's the worst that can happen? So today we're going to be looking at 3 games that I picked up in local charity shops. Let's get started. For goodness sake. Next up, we have got... Actually, that's not fair. Let's talk very briefly about Trivial Pursuit. As you can see, this is the Trivial Pursuit Disney Family Edition, and I think everybody knows how Trivial Pursuit works, but there are a couple of things about this edition that I wanted to point out, which help to circumvent some of the main issues that I have with trivia games in general. First of all, the movers have Mickey Mouse ears. How cute is that? But seriously, there are 3 things which help to elevate this particular version of Trivial Pursuit. First of all, of course, is the theme. It's a Disney-based game, everybody loves Disney, but it also means that you do not have to deal with general trivia questions. You are dealing specifically with questions on a particular theme. If you have a house full of people who love Disney films, you are obviously going to get on better with something like this than you would be with a more general trivia game. Secondly, because this is a family edition, they have designed it so that adults and children can play together. There are 2 sets of question cards, the dark blue ones and the light blue ones. Children aged 14 or under will answer questions from the light blue set, whilst everybody else will answer questions from the dark blue set, and that helps to create a more level playing field. The third thing is that at the start of the game, each player or team will receive a number of action cards, and as with the questions, they are divided into a set of dark blue cards and a set of light blue cards, and the light blue cards are for the children. And these action cards can be used on your turn to gain specific bonuses that will help you to catch up if you are behind, or even to take the lead. As an example, here we have a clue card, which you can play to force the person reading the question to give you a clue as to the correct answer. And here we have a cheeky steal card, which will allow you to take one of the wedges from an adult player if you land on their space. As I have said before, one of the issues with trivia games is that if you are playing against someone who knows a lot more than you, they are going to steam ahead, and those action cards just make it a little bit easier to stay in the game and to make it a little bit more fun for everybody at the table. At the end of the day, this is still Trivial Pursuit. I'm not going to like it ever, but an attempt was made. But I know that people are not tuning in to Always Bored, Never Boring to look at Trivial Pursuit. What you want to look at are really old children's games from the 90s, based on even older children's television shows. I know my audience well. This glorious masterpiece is Tugs, and I'm going to read the front of the box with apologies to Patrick Allen. The tugboat, for its size, is the most powerful craft afloat, and the star tugs are the power behind the docks and waterways that make up the big city port. This is Tugs. So for anybody who doesn't know what Tugs is, and I am sure that's going to be quite a few of you, it was a children's television show from 1989 that was created by 2 of the people who had previously worked on Thomas the Tank Engine and had apparently not understood what made Thomas the Tank Engine so charming and engaging. The show was about tugboats in the 1920s, and you pretty much just have to imagine Thomas the Tank Engine, but with boats instead of trains, and with far less memorable characters. In fact, I would say one of the most memorable things about the show is it has the most bizarre, sexy saxophone theme song ever for a children's television show, and I recommend everybody look it up. It must be online. The other thing of note about the show was that the wonderful Patrick Allen did the narration, and I'm a big fan of Patrick Allen for 2 main reasons. First of all, he did the voiceover for Vic Reeves' Big Night Out, and also he overdubbed all of the dialogue for Leon Green in the absolute classic Hammer horror film The Devil Rides Out, one of my favourite films of all time. Honestly, talking about the TV show and talking about Patrick Allen is probably far more interesting than talking about this game, because this game is very much a children's roll and move game. an oddity from 1990 that earns a place on this show simply because of the theme. Let's take a quick look in the box anyway. The board comes in 6 pieces and it's huge. It measures 594mm by 840mm if you needed to know. And it hurts my eyes a bit to look at it because it's ghastly. It's also wipe clean because this is a game for kids and kids are gross. Probably the most interesting thing about the board is that all the way around the edge it has the International Code of Signals flags, and these are produced on the back of the rules book. Who knows? One day that could save your life. And as I mentioned before, this is basically a roll and move game. You will pick a tugboat. For example, here's Zug the Tug. And you will start over on the dock somewhere, and then you will have a contract to collect a stricken vessel out at sea. This is the Princess Alice, one of the only vessels I could find that wasn't a racist stereotype. And on your turn you move around the ghastly board until you reach the vessel, and then you have to tow it back to a specified point on the board. Everything is done by exact movement. You have to make sure you roll exactly the right number to get into a port, and all that sort of stuff that is very old-fashioned and the kind of thing that will make most people switch off very, very quickly as they become frustrated with attempting to roll the same number over and over again. The only other thing really of note is that there are several spaces on the board where you could see a hazard symbol. When you land on one of those spaces, you will draw, funnily enough, a water hazard card. And these will do crappy things to you, like making you immediately return to the dock, basically starting the game from scratch. This is quite clearly a game of its time, and a game where they have attempted to capture the theme of the Tugs TV show, where there were 2 rival tugboat companies that were constantly vying for the contracts to go and collect different vessels. And I guess back in the 90s, the only way they could think to do that was a roll and move game. As I said before, this is really only interesting because of the theme. It has its place in history. As far as I'm aware, this is the only game that was ever made for Tugs. Tugs wasn't around for very long. It certainly didn't have the longevity of Thomas the Tank Engine. But I think that's all I've got to say about this one. It was complete, by the way. Absolutely everything in the box, which is a nice little bonus. As to what I'm going to do with it, not sure yet. Not the kind of thing I'm likely to keep in my collection, not even for nostalgic purposes. But every once in a while, you will be rummaging through a charity shop and you will find a little gem. And that's what we have here. We have Hey, That's My Fish from Fantasy Flight Games. It's a game that has one of the worst taglines ever. It says it's a sub-zero game of fishy strategy. With a tagline like that, I wouldn't be surprised if many gamers gave this the cold shoulder. It probably had a chilly reception. I'm going to stop. I actually have a bit of a history with Hey That's My Fish. Way back, I used to have the deluxe edition of Hey That's My Fish. It had really nice painted penguins and it had really big chunky tiles. Really lavishly produced, really overproduced for the type of game this is, which is a simple abstract strategy game for 2 to 4 players. I used to really enjoy playing the game, but eventually it kind of got pushed out of rotation. I stopped playing it a lot, and then one day someone offered me quite a sizable amount of money for it because the deluxe edition was no longer in print. By that time, Fantasy Flight Games had the license and they had produced this version that we have here, so I thought to myself, well, I can sell my deluxe edition, and if I ever feel like I'm missing out on playing the game, I can pick up the much cheaper Fantasy Flight edition instead. So I sold my deluxe edition, and I never really thought much more about it, and I never really felt the need to pick up the game again. It just went out of my head, really. And then my wife was in the charity shop, and she saw this, and she thought to herself, hey, I remember that game. So she picked it up for the princely sum of £2. And there we have it. Hey, That's My Fish is back in my collection, but the far inferior Fantasy Flight Games version. I've already looked inside this box. It is 100% complete, but it really is a downgrade from that deluxe edition that I knew. In the deluxe edition, the penguins, not only are they painted, they are really large, and the tokens that you use to set up the board are also really large. And that made the game so much easier to use. It was so much quicker to set up the game. It was so much easier to move the penguins around the board. It was very, very clear at all times to see what paths were open to you. I have played this version a few times. It has much, much smaller components. It's much more fiddly. It's much more difficult to see what's going on. And as a result, it's much less fun. The game comes with 60 of these hexagonal flow tiles. I've not set them all up because life is too short and I want to get this video finished at some point in the next week. And you can see that each ice flow has a number of fishes on it. The game also comes with 4 sets of coloured penguins, and these are delightful. We have this one holding the fish, this one cheesing it with a fish, this one who has eyes bigger than their belly, and this one who has no fish and is in a bit of a strop about it. And at the start of the game, every player will have a number of penguins in the colour of their choice, and they will position them on the board starting on any ice flows that have just a single fish on them. For this example, I'm just putting one green penguin down, and here is my hand for scale, because these are very small playing pieces, and this is my biggest issue with this version of the game. In the deluxe edition, the ice flows were much, much bigger. You could set up the board in seconds, and during gameplay, it's really, really important to be able to see the straight lines. You need to be able to know that this hex here, for example, is in a straight line from this hex here. With small hexes that have shorter sides, it's much easier for hexes to get misaligned, and suddenly it's not as easy to be able to read the board. But anyway, the game itself could not be simpler. On your turn, you pick one of your penguins, and you will move that penguin in a straight line. And the movement rules are incredibly simple. You can move as far as possible until you reach a space that contains a penguin, either one of your own or an opponent's, or you reach a space where there was an ice flow but the ice flow has been removed, or you reach the edge of the board. You cannot change direction during your turn, you can only move in straight lines. Our penguin here, in our example, could move to any hex along here, like so, or he could move any hex along here, like so. You pick where you want to go, and then you stop. I'm right next to a hex with 3 fish on it, so it makes sense for me to move one space, like so. When you have finished your move, you claim the ice flow that you started your move on. So in this example, I would take this ice flow, I add it to my scoring pile, it will score me 1 point at the end of the game. Play then continues to the next player on the table, and that's it. You just keep going until the ice flow is completely broken up, nobody can make any more moves. And then everybody adds up how many fish they have. Person with the most fish wins. Really simple, really elegant. I really, really like this as a very simple, quick strategy game. But I just don't like this version very much. I think the smaller penguins aren't so much of a problem, but the smaller hexes do make it a little bit fiddly to set up, a little bit fiddly to play. And that does sap some of the enjoyment from what is a very quick, simple, elegant filler. So, do I regret getting rid of the deluxe edition? No, not really. Hadn't really thought of the game since this turned up in my house. Do I regret adding this version to my collection? No, not really. It was £2, it's complete, it's a really nice filler, it'll get played from time to time. So I guess that's all I have to say about that. And there we have it, 3 games found in local charity shops. We have one that is let down by its production values, we have one that is let down by its overly simplistic roll and move mechanisms, and we have one that is let down because it's Trivial Pursuit. Which was my star find of the 3? Well, I would be tempted to say Tugs, simply for the theme, simply for the nostalgia, but I'm not crazy. That's a game that I'm never going to play. Hey, that's my fish, I am going to play. I can appreciate what they tried to do with this version of the game. They tried to make it a travel-friendly edition. They tried to make it as small as possible. They tried to make it so you could play it on a table of any size and still have fun. It's a perfect game to slip into your suitcase when you're going away with the family. So I can see exactly why they have done what they have done, but I do think it's a shame that those pieces aren't just a little bit bigger. But even with that, small gripe, I have to say this is my hot pick, and I'm not saying that just for the halibut. That's it. I'm going. Thanks for watching, if you're watching. If you've enjoyed the video, please consider pressing the like button. If you've really enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so. And hopefully, I'll see you all again very soon. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.